we're starting a little late, but at this time, I will open up the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission regular meeting for January 14th and call the meeting to order. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay. And so we'll accept public comment. Is there any public comment? Doesn't look like there's any public for comment. So we'll adjourn to the Policy Advisory Committee and move right on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes for December 17th, 2015, and item B, the overall work program amendment number 2.
Move for approval.
We have a second?
Second.
Could you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
I'm going to have to abstain as this is my first meeting.
Policy Advisory Member Medham?
Yes.
And Chairman Murray?
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to the policy and administrative items. C, accept and file the 2014-15 audit, and let's see, is there any discussion on that, Tamara?
The Finance Committee met after the posting of the agenda on Monday, and they made a recommendation also that the Commission accept and file the audit.
Okay. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Just to say that the Finance Committee met briefly and considered what was in the audit and the singular finding that was in the audit, and I think that's been taken care of. So I would recommend that we approve it.
Second.
Any public comment on item C, the audit for 2014-15? General public comment? No, just,
Missed it.
okay, all right. Could you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson?
Yes.
Commissioner Short?
Also abstaining.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Public Advisory Member Medham?
Yes.
Chairman Murray?
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to item D, the discussion items, unmet regional transportation needs.
One of our ongoing highest priority unmet transportation needs is the non-emergency medical transportation in our community. And a couple of months ago, I had an idea. And the idea is related to having a partnership with Rural Human Services and potentially, or somebody in the Transportation Commission, to help find a way to get our people home once they're flown out of the community. There was a data point, and I don't know what Supervisor Gitlin was referencing, but I did do a little bit of follow-up yesterday afternoon, and there are approximately, well over 800 people in the 2015 year were flown out of the community for medical transportation needs. Those are the emergencies, but when they're being released from hospitals and they're outside our area, they're stuck. And we've talked about this for the last 10 years. Regardless of the direction of the hospital and all of the stuff that's happening in the community, I'd really like to very singularly focus to try and find a way to get our people home. And I think I have an idea about how we can do that. So I'm going to be doing, a little bit of, community exploring and how we can make this happen, and come back with a more developed idea to the Commission, hopefully in the near future. So I just wanted to share it with you that I have an idea. It's regardless of, like I said, regardless of what happens with the hospital, this is going to be an ongoing unmet need. It has been.
It has been, you're right.
Right.
What's your reach going to be? Anywhere or?
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. Or, and honestly, the farther away, the bigger the problem.
Right.
But we're just taking a look at it. So I can say anywhere because I'm thinking, solve it all. Of course, we're not going to be able to solve it all, but I think that we should do the best we can, and I'm just exploring how to make that happen. That certainly doesn't address all of our non-emergency medical transportation because folks you still have to leave the community to go to regular appointments for any kind of, sometimes regular services and sometimes specialty services. So we have a lot of other non-emergency medical transportation unmet needs, but there's a potential solution for this one area, and I'm going to see if we can move it forward.
I don't want to press the issue today because I know you're going to give something more thorough at a later date, but are you thinking of an income eligible process, or is it would it be open to everyone?
No, that's not what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, offer it to everybody who needs it, and find some public-private partnership funding partners, as an example, maybe something in collaboration with a community foundation. I'm all over the place with my ideas, but I have some ideas about how it can be funded, how we can be a good partner with it, maybe provide some leadership, it not, necessarily take away from what we're doing now. So I'm, with your consent, I'm just going to move it forward until I have more solid ideas and bring my ideas back to the commission for a more full discussion.
Yeah, it sounds great. I don't know if you were thinking about ground only, but you might get a hold of Pin Alaska Airlines.
I'm
Or
not thinking about ground only. There are some people released from the hospital who can't drive for 8 hours.
Right.
Can't sit for 8 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, they may be released from the hospital, but that doesn't mean that they can endure an 8-hour car ride. So I'm going into it pretty open-minded.
Good.
If I could make a suggestion.
Sure.
Kellar Lifeline currently does non-emergency medical transport. Definitely check with them. From what I understand, the Affordable Care Act affords pretty decent reimbursement rates for that. So
Yeah, we'll be,
definitely
eventually pulling together every resource we can get. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Proceed. I think we
Thank
have
you.
consensus here. All right. The U.S. Highway 199, 197 update.
So this is a standing item on our agenda, and at our meeting maybe a month ago, the commission asked if our past project manager now, Kevin Church, and we're having a replacement project manager appointed to us soon, could come and give an update about this. So we all know and are familiar with our project manager, Kevin Church, and I'd also like to acknowledge Matt Brady is back. He was posted in Sacramento for too long, and I'm glad to see him back at District 1. Go ahead, Kevin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am here to answer questions. Is there anything particular you'd like to hear?
We'd like to hear that everything's going ahead on 197, 199 project.
Caltrans is in the district and in headquarters completely committed to the delivery of this project. We are still engaged in our Section 7, which is the Endangered Species Act consultation with National Marine Fisheries. We do have a little bit of a setback, and the person in National Marine Fisheries that we have been working closely with has decided to retire. So we got a new staff on NIMP's part that we're bringing up to speed on the project, and they have their own questions, and we're working with them to resolve them right now.
And is there a timeline, Kevin, that we're working within here, or do we have an idea of what?
Right now, I'd love to give you a timeline, but because of the new staff with National Marine Fisheries, that's a little bit in flux. I will, of course, either personally or my replacement, will keep Tamara informed as that schedule becomes more developed and more clear.
Okay, great.
And Kevin, I'm sure Tamara updated you on the RTP meeting, the workshop that we had last week, and the input that we had from a number of concerned citizens on this project at the meeting last week.
I did hear a little bit about that. Do you have a question?
So there's still a lot of resistance to the trucks, the longer trucks in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So Tamara, I'm sure, informed you of that particular concern from those constituents that are concerned about that.
Yes, she did. We have been aware of that throughout the development of this project. That has been the main focus of the opposition. It's also the purpose of the project, is to provide STA access, safe STA access through that corridor.
So Catherine, if I could, you know, we have, in addition to the public meeting that we had, Brad Medham very generously came up and talked to the Sunrise Rotary yesterday. So this is his second consecutive day, thank you Brad, in the community, and yesterday very early drive. But, you know, I think that it's important to remember that when you have a set of folks attending a public meeting, you know, we had some email blasts from some environmental groups, even from Berkeley. We had EPIC representatives standing outside the door with flyers saying, do this. So there was a very different tone to the meeting than I think what really represents our community. The Sunrise Rotary, as an example, yesterday, you know, their question was, you know, is this project moving forward, you know, given all of the challenges with the funding and the lawsuit? And I see nothing in our community. We went back to many of our boards and took additional votes on this just about a year and a half ago now. And our community is still in 100% support of this project. We didn't have a single elected official voting no on this project. And I don't see that changing. So while our, you know, the folks doing business in our community may not be part of those email blasts and they may not show up to the meetings, I do think that they are making comment on the importance of the future transportation in our community, maybe or maybe not 199, which is not in the planning phase. So we need to be careful to understand that this project is not in the planning phase, and where our regional transportation plan update is a long-range plan. So it's an important distinction to make, but the tone of one meeting that is, you know, set by a couple of key groups doesn't necessarily represent our community, which, you know, we must remember votes Republican in nearly every election. So, you know, we're not Humboldt County. Our politics and our public are very dissimilar to our southern neighbors. And I think that really we seem to, at least politically, have more in common with our northern neighbors in Oregon. So it's, you know, I guess it's easy to be, you know, overwhelmed by that number of negative comments, but I don't think that it's reflective of our whole community.
I just brought it up because Caltrans wasn't at the meeting, so that's why I brought it up.
Well, Caltrans
Right,
was at
they-
the
Oh,
meeting.
Jason was there,
was at
that's
the
right, I'm
meeting.
sorry. I
Right.
forgot Jason was there. Sorry, Jason.
You know, but for our new commissioner, Mr. Short, for, you know, all of you in the room, I'm absolutely committed to this project, and I really appreciate the consistency that the commission and the community is given in moving it forward. There, you know, even little projects like the Fred Haight Drive, you know, took 10 years. I mean, that little project took 10 years. So, you know, we have to get in it and stay in it until it's done with all of our projects. I did have a question about replacing the bridge without STAA access. And, you know, I find that really interesting because we would never replace something as important and expensive as a bridge with a substandard product. In the same way that we wouldn't put in, you know, we wouldn't reconstruct a roadway without putting in pedestrian improvements. I mean, that's some of the folks in Smith River said, boy, if we didn't have to pay for these pedestrian improvements, could we have done a bigger project? Well, we just don't do that. When you build it completely. And so that's, you know, it's similar to that kind of very different perspective of a request. I mean, for my part, I think, why would you want to put the roadway in and do all of that work without any pedestrian improvements? But some folks, you know, disagree with that, and that's okay. And so that's an analogy.
I forgot that Jason was there, so I apologize, Jason, and you were there. It was quite a long evening.
Well, we will be having another public meeting about our regional transportation plan update on Wednesday, the 27th.
Same location?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be the same location, same time, from 4 to 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 27th.
Okay.
May I
Any
add
other-
something on
Sure,
the
go
bridge
ahead.
replacement? I'd like to make it clear, and maybe not everybody understands that. In this bridge replacement, regardless of whether we open up that corridor to SDAA or not, the standards are the same. The bridge will not change, right? So it's not like there's a different bridge that gets built there if we were doing it for a different purpose.
Any other comments or questions for Kevin?
Well, I only have one question that we addressed last month a little bit, and it's not really the 197, 199 project. It had to do with the barriers against the river. We were going to talk about
Guardrails?
the
Safety,
guardrails,
yeah.
and we were going to have an update on that today. Is that on the agenda?
I hope that we'll have an update on that. Yeah, okay, go ahead, Brad. I'm sorry, Kevin.
So I'm assuming we're speaking of the location where the car went off and into the water?
Yes, that's what prompted this, is
Not
the
the only
inquiries
location,
from the community about why aren't there guardrails at that location and other locations, but that's the one in question now.
We look at all of the roadway continuously, sort of determining by what accidents occur, what should go on. I have worked with our safety folks on that particular location to ask, what should we be doing there? The accidents that we've had in that location prior to this one have all been what I would actually more usually expect there, and that is leaving the curve to the outside, okay? In this location, the outside is away from the river as opposed to the river. We obviously, this is still under investigation, it's still in flux. We don't know why they managed to go off to the inside of a curve, but if you think about it when you're driving, that's a strange way to leave the roadway, typically.
It's not the first time it's happened. In the last year and a half, I can recall at least 3 incidents prior to this one.
Okay.
Cars gone into the river.
But not at that location.
At that location.
Okay. If so, that they're not reflected, I'll sit and talk with you afterwards, and we'll get that information, because I would like to know that. One of the constraints we have is our data set is whatever CHP gives us, and if there are accidents, statewide accidents don't always get reported. If they're property damage only, oftentimes, especially in remote areas, CHP isn't called out. So if there's additional history there, I need that, because then I can make changes to what we're looking at.
I know one specifically occurred in a passing incident, because there's passing allowed along that stretch right there, going west.
I think it also may be a reflection of how the delay in data sets from the SWITers
Yes.
really impacts our ability to make current decisions. And, that's a statewide problem that we have, that, it's actually the CHPs really needs to be given the funding and the ability to keep current on our accident rates. And that's an area where Transportation and the California Highway Patrol are really working in unison to, push for the funding necessary to have that accident data updated regularly. They're quite behind on their data right now.
So just so I understand, then, it's going to continue to be looked at and studied, is that?
Oh, yes, we haven't reached a conclusion at all yet.
Oh, okay, so it's not over.
No.
We may end up with some, we may not, but.
And it is entirely appropriate for us to take information on non-reported accidents and add that to the data set. Now, if there's information out there we don't have, I'll certainly share it with our engineers that are looking at it, but we're not done yet by any means.
That'd be great, thank you.
Search and rescue would be one of the more appropriate contexts, because they're always called out on that particular incident.
Right. And one of the things we've done in other rural communities, especially in some of the Native American communities, is we've worked with the ambulance services to create a separate data set that gives us the information that's missing from ours. So we'll certainly do that.
So I can send an email to Search and Rescue and put them in touch with Brad Medham and see if they can't get some collaboration.
I don't know. Just curious, how far back do you look when you're gathering data?
Typically, and I'm looking out to my engineering staff, I think that for a project it's 5 years,
3 or 5 years, depending on the type of investigation.
but our active data set goes back 10 years. After that, we archive it, but it's still available to us. It's just a little harder to get our hands on.
Good to know.
Okay.
I was just
Anything else for Kevin?
I'm sorry, I was just reflecting back to a guy I went to high school with back winter of 87, 88, was killed the same spot, same scenario, went into the river. Travis Young here.
Just one thing. I wanted to say thank you for having me participate in, as project manager for Del Norte County for the last 10 years. Tamara, I really enjoyed our working relationship. Thank you very much. Been a long road, been a lot of fun. Had our challenges, but thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. I think
So,
Eileen Cooper, right?
moving on, we have a last chance grade update. Yeah. Yes?
Anybody with last chance grade information?
I can give you a little bit.
Okay.
If any of you travel south, you'll notice that there's a crew working on that retaining wall right now. What they're doing is that the retaining wall you see is actually a facade, and the actual retaining wall is behind it. But because of the shift at that location, some of the material, the lagging material, is potentially coming loose. So they're working to remove or secure that material, depending on what they find. We are continuing to work on the project initiation document, which will then allow us to look for funding sources. And we continue to work with FHWA in terms of emergency funding sources to see what can be available there.
And then how's the monitoring working?
So we are in process with an emergency project, and part of that includes real-time monitoring. The communications has been an issue and a struggle for us because of the location. My understanding is I had an email from the project manager last Sunday, and they had resolved that issue, so the data is now getting to headquarters. That data is not going to necessarily be available like real time to the public. Because it's strained data, it's measuring things that are occurring in the earth. We're going to correlate that with what's going on the pavement so that we can send our maintenance forces there. But we are also looking at the potential for real-time cameras in that area that will be available on the internet so that people can take a look at the location. We're also potentially going to have a change in signage and some work done there. So there's a lot of things that are going to be done, and many of them aren't quite nailed down yet.
Do we have a timeline? Because we thought that they would be in place by now, the monitoring, and with the storms, everybody's
I understand completely.
concerned.
The gauges are in place, the strain gauges are in place, the communications facilities locally are in place. That, as of last weekend, is working to the headquarters geotechnical folks. What they have to do is take what we experienced a few weeks ago in terms of movement at the location and calibrate that so we know when to call out our maintenance forces. So that's in process. I'm expecting within a week or so that that'll be in place so that our maintenance people are getting a call when we detect movement. Okay, it's not necessarily going to be broadcast to the world. We're going to get our guys up there. This last, as a sort of an aside, this last movement that occurred up there, by the time we heard about it in the district office, maintenance had already gone up and paved it, because they're watching it all the time. And so their response was immediate and didn't wait for somebody in Eureka to tell them to go do it. They did it. We actually, the way we are, we're now going to them and saying, did you take pictures before you paid it? So we can, understand the magnitude. All of that goes in our marketing for the project. When we talk to FHWA and we say, we have a serious issue here, having photos that show us what's going on is very important. So we're collecting all that data.
Brett, I have a question. Is there anything that I or the Transportation Commission can do to accelerate the process of getting the cameras up?
No, it's funded through an emergency order, so it's not as if it's waiting for money, and it's not waiting for the normal project delivery process. So I will communicate the urgency of the situation, just in case they don't know, but I think they do, and let them know that it came up as a concern here.
If we could get a timeline on the cameras, I think that our community would really appreciate some certainty that the cameras are going up, that they are funded, and here's a potential timeline for that delivery.
I will acknowledge, however, our first priority has been to get the strain gauge data to us so we can understand what's moving. But the cameras are in process, and I'll get a timeline for that.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, if I could, I was kind of under the impression that we were trying to get real-time data out to the public. You're kind of indicating that maybe that's not going to be the case. Is it going to be something different?
We are looking at providing some real-time information to the public. The difficulty is when we send a maintenance person up there and they look at the road, there's a whole bunch of sort of mental processing going on. Is it flat? Is it even? When you're trying to deal with mechanical data collection, okay, what we're looking at right now are stresses, subsurface stresses that are occurring. So they're doing a strain gauge, and as it pulls more on that. translating that into what's occurring on the pavement is going to be a little bit tougher. So the current plan is to have that data collected and correlate it with what we see on the ground, and then determine when we need to send our maintenance forces up there. Because the whole point of, from our perspective, is we want to get somebody up on the ground as quickly as possible to do an informed analysis of what's going on visually, when they can sort of take in everything, what the wall's doing, what the roadway's doing, what the weather's doing, and make a determination of whether or not we need to restrict access on the roadway. Did I answer your question? I hope I... Now, I guess the answer, to put it in plain English, is it's not our intent to provide that data in sort of a streaming fashion because of the interpretation that's involved in deciding what it means.
But once you assess it and interpret it, then are you going to put that information out as far as...
You know, we haven't really looked at that yet. I'll certainly take it back as an issue to make sure folks have...
I was just under a different impression. I kind of thought when we had these discussions early, when they were putting all this stuff in, that we were looking at some real-time data.
We are looking at real-time data. I think the issue is
I mean
what
to the
gets
pu- I'm talking about
communicated to the public. Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'll certainly take that issue back, and I'll find out some more detail about what we plan to have in terms of public communication.
Great, appreciate it.
So thank you, Matt. I just also received a reminder that the project manager, Sebastian Cohen, will be making a presentation to the next Board of Supervisors meeting on the 26th. So if the city council folks want to tune in, take a look at the video, check the minutes, something, but the Board of Supervisors directly requested that presentation, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or so, and they've got this scheduled on the 26th at the Board of Supervisors meeting. So he'll be able to, by then, be able to answer some of these detailed questions also.
Cool.
You know, I just want to add that sitting on the last chance grade stakeholders group, we hear a lot of the engineering pieces, and there's the fear of the people that suddenly there'll be a catastrophic event and the road will disappear, and suddenly we'll have people also disappearing off the edge of the roadway. And I understood that that's an unlikely event because of, I guess, a lot of the modifications that Caltrans has done in that area. But I thought that the vision eventually was this automatic unit that would be sensing the movement would also be able to put up almost automated signs to stop the roadway before anybody got on site, even to ensure people that they won't get there first.
That has been under consideration, and it hasn't been excluded by any means. However, you know, the issue of how reliably the data that we collect predicts what's happening on the roadway is the one we have to work through. So we haven't by any means ruled that out. We just don't want to guarantee things we can't deliver.
It would just be reassuring if we can get there someday.
Right, I think that the intent of the cameras is to give the community access, more immediate access, you know, to something that makes them feel better. In my memory, and this is only my memory, and I can go back and look at the meeting notes, but that the question about the real-time information, when we took a look a few months ago at the presentation from Caltrans about the monitoring system, I think she made it very clear that this is the first step to the monitoring. We're going to see how this works, and that the other monitoring is going to be considered, but that the monitoring system that's in place now does not serve that function for the general public. So I think that, that's what we're stuck with right now. And I think that folks would understand that interpretation of the underground data to what's happening on the surface is a pretty big technical job that I certainly don't have the capacity to do.
Well, at the last North Deal meeting, Mr. Fielder indicated that they were looking at some sort of device that if the road dropped more than 6 inches, that there would be flashing red lights that said proceed with caution, stop, and then proceed with caution. So I know that's in a phase, and maybe that hasn't been determined yet, but he indicated that there was going to be...
We've considered everything from automatic gates, okay, to warning signs. I mean, all of those things are still on the table. We haven't by any means eliminated those.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
One more thing about last chance grade is the stakeholders group had developed a white paper that was released last month, and the Transportation Commission will have it available on our website.
It is available.
Okay, you put it up already. Okay, so if anybody would like to read it, I don't think it had been available for the general public to read So now it's available on our website, Transportation Commission's website. Okay, anything else for Last Chance Grade? Did you want to talk about Last Chance Grade, Eileen? We're on Last Chance Grade. We're talking about, okay, come on up.
I followed the paper.
Can
There
you
was a
state your
letter.
name? State your
Eileen
name.
Cooper.
Thanks.
A person attended the Regional Transportation Plan update meeting and stated that she was cut off. The point she wanted to make is that funding can be rescinded, projects can be canceled, and we need to free up as much money as possible to handle what Jeff, the consultant, stressed is a funding crisis. I find it, very disturbing that relevant points made by the public were discouraged and disregarded during a very important public input meeting for due process under CEQA for a very important plan. Now, I would like to just remind all of us that this plan, it's a visionary document, and this person was 100% right. This plan is a 20-year plan that sets out goals, aspirations for the community. And the community showed up to express what was important to them, and they were made to think that comments were irrelevant. I just like to remind you that the originating document here was, the EIR was in 1992, it's my understanding. So we have a 20-year document. It's 25 years old now, and we've been throwing supplements on top of it, one after the other. Well, that may not quite address what we need to do here. It's a visionary document. There are things in there that, things have changed. The project has changed. The information about the project has changed. There's substantial evidence and on record during the EIR process that there are going to be significant impacts from Highway 199 and 197. And if dozens of people show up to an input meeting for our vision of our community that recognize that this isn't the deal that they thought was supposed to come down. It's just like a little history here.
Eileen, your time is up.
A short history.
Eileen, your time is up.
Okay, is it?
Thank
Have
you.
you been timing carefully?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, is basically the point. I am glad you're having another meeting. I hope it goes differently. Thank you.
You can submit comments in writing. Thank you.
I
All
do
right,
have
we'll
some.
move on to commissioners' comments and reports. Any comments from commissioners? I just have one. We were talking about the RTP and different unmet needs for transportation, and I learned about something that I thought might be kind of fun and interesting is a bike rodeo for the safe route to schools. So I don't know if anybody would like to for us to investigate that idea with Amber. Is she still doing the Safe Route to Schools?
Right, Amber's Bike Rodeo is scheduled for this spring.
Oh, great.
And yeah, we actually just met this morning to do some brainstorming and make sure we're moving forward collaboratively on the Safe Routes to School program. So we had a really good and positive meeting. I think she's doing a spectacular job. The one bike rodeo per year is part of the project.
Great.
And so she'll be coordinating that. And
Okay.
I will encourage her to go to all of you as volunteers.
Absolutely,
I would like to just welcome Darren.
absolutely.
Look forward to working with you.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Nice to have you here. Anything else? Chris?
Thank you, Chair, for jogging my memory. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one item. Last week at the Resource Advisory Committee of the county, we considered several proposals specific to transportation. One in particular came up specific to mountain biking. And I thought the proposal really good because it was the proposal that was submitted for funding to the RAC was specific to planning, more importantly, identification of a trail network that would eventually attract tourism from all over the world to our area to enjoy specific trails. My question is, how would the RTP help in that process?
The active transportation plan that we recently updated is going to be a primary source of active transportation projects. We just did very large effort in creating that initial active transportation plan document. We had a lot of public input on that. So that's the basis for the active transportation component in our regional transportation plan, but that's only the basis. And if anybody has an idea that they would like for the region to consider, I think that providing public comment, getting in touch with me, showing up to the meeting on the 27th, giving me a call and sitting down and presenting an idea in writing, sharing with me the application that they submitted. There are all kinds of ways to do it that don't necessarily have to be time intensive, especially if they've already made a presentation to the Resource Advisory Committee. They have, I would expect they have their information together so they could even take their application that they currently have and just forward it to us and say, please consider this in the regional transportation plan.
That's a great idea. We have another meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I have just kind of a simplistic anecdotal comment to make. I find myself going to Gold Beach once a month for a meeting, and I go up there in the dark and it's raining, and that is, compared to the California roads, and I do this for the benefit of the Caltrans people, I want to say how much I appreciate the signage and the reflectors and all the things we have down here, because that is a scary road from Gold Beach to Crescent City in the rain, because everything's black. There just is no help. And, you know, there's no place to turn off if somebody's behind you. It doesn't warn you ahead of time, so it's already by. And then I took the ride up to Gasky, like I do often, and it's just a whole different world on a lesser road. So I just want to say how much I appreciate the safety you do try and interject. Thank you.
So Kevin, where are you going? If I can ask that. Sure.
I have taken over traffic operations for the district.
Right on.
So you'll stay here, I mean, in our.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you for everything you've done for us. You've been good to work with.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anything else from commissioners? Okay, so we will adjourn as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Delaware Local Transportation Commission, and by poll vote, approve and adopt the actions taken by the Policy Advisory Committee in items listed above. So,
I move to approve and adopt the actions taken by the Policy Advisory Committee.
Second.
is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, could you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley,
Yes.
Commissioner Hemmingson,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Policy Advisory Member Madam,
No, he doesn't vote
Oh,
on this
sorry.
here.
And Chairman Murray?
Yes, okay, and we need to reschedule our meeting for February,
Right,
is
thank
that
you for
correct?
that, Catherine, because I have the notes right in front of me. So thank you for that reminder. I sent an email out last night, and I had talked to David Finnegan. He had alerted me he would not be able to make the meeting today for a special meeting that he had. And this is talking about our March meeting, not our April
Oh,
meeting.
April.
Okay. March.
March.
So in March, because of the scheduling conflicts with moving forward through the regional transportation plan process, including the environmental documents and all of the associated timeframes, having the March meeting at a regular scheduled date is not going to be particularly useful. We would like to have it the 24th or the 31st. Both of those are Thursdays at 11 o'clock.
Either day works for me.
Let's try for the 24th, yeah? Commissioner Howard? Okay, so then we'll reconvene to March 24th after the February meeting. We'll still be meeting in February, but I wanted to do it early so we could get it on our calendars.
But not the 14th, I don't think,
Maybe not.
because that's a
Yeah,
Sunday.
sorry about that.
So probably the 11th?
Sounds good.
The 11th,
What? What?
We're reconvening today to Thursday, February 11th.
Yeah, not, our agenda says the 14th, which is
Yeah.
a Sunday.
That's just a typo.
Yeah,
oh, for the February meeting.
yeah.
Oh, really got me confused there for a minute.
It is confusing. I'm just trying to get you all here in one place in March.
Okay,
Trying to-
all right. So at this time, I will adjourn our meeting, and we will convene to our regularly scheduled meeting for February 11th. And thank you all for being here.